Hey guys, Icy Cat here. Today I want to talk to you about Ghost Recon Wildlands. One of the biggest comments I repeatedly get is how similar this game is to The Division. But how similar are they really? Let's talk about that next. While we talk about this in the background, I'm going to have some footage rolling. This is not actual gameplay footage from me. I was at E3, I did get a chance to play Ghost Recon Wildlands hands-on, however I was not able to capture any footage. Only a select few were able to record, and they had a private session set up. I was not one of those attendees, so this footage was given to me by Core Ross. He also is a fellow YouTuber, and he was kind enough to give me access to his footage, so this is his gameplay and his session that he was able to do. Ubisoft did want everybody to know at E3 that this is not gameplay representative of the final product. The AI was dumbed down to its most basic element. Everybody was given pretty much invincibility. All of the weapon handling mechanics were pretty much disabled. There wasn't any real recoil to speak of or anything like that. But just understand that the mechanics you're seeing here are very rudimentary and not what it's going to look like in the end. So I've done about a half dozen videos on Ghost Recon Wildlands so far and mixed it into my Rainbow Six channel. Whenever I do, the number one comment I always get is how this is basically the Division 2.0. But does that argument really hold any water? Well, if your basis of comparison is simply the fact that it's a Tom Clancy game with a third-person perspective, therefore they must be the same, then I guess if that's your only grounds for comparison, maybe. But if I had to compare my time with Ghost Recon Wildlands to any other currently existing game, I would say it most closely matches a highly tactical version of maybe a Grand Theft Auto kind of game. But really, the movement and mechanics are the only similarity between them along with the open world concept. Aside from that, the atmosphere is completely different. Grand Theft Auto is very tongue-in-cheek, whereas this is very tactical and very serious, and it's just a completely different concept from the presentation standpoint. Honestly, the biggest hole in the argument that Wildlands is basically a Division 2.0 clone is that they don't use anywhere near the same setup for how the game plays. The Division is kind of a third-person action role-playing game. You find new items and equipment, you upgrade them. When you have a chance, you get a new level of weapon or a new level of armor. You have levels and abilities, your enemy has levels and abilities. If you're a different level than they are, the damage ratings scale and things change that way. They use a DPS system. This actually stands for damage per second, so your guns, instead of being a one-shot kill, will instead inflict a number of damage points per second of fire. This creates protracted firefights where instead of taking targets out, you're instead whittling them down. The DPS system for me was the nail in the coffin that just made it not my kind of a game. None of that applies for Ghost Recon Wildlands. There is going to be some kind of a level-based progression system in play. We do know that there's experience points that get awarded. What those wind up being used for is still undetermined at this point. They have mentioned that customization items are part of what gets unlocked through progress in the game. So we're probably looking at like when you reach a certain level, certain items are maybe unlocked for you to be able to use. But your level has nothing to do with how you do damage to the enemy. That's where the damage per second system was in effect in Division. Ghost Recon uses a bullet system, and this is just my generic term for saying there's a bullet that comes out of the gun and it goes into the enemy and they die. There is no like, hey, I'm level 7 and you're level 14, since you're facing an enemy that's 7 levels more difficult than you are, they're going to take 36 bullets to drop instead of 1 or 2. No, it doesn't matter. Now, I don't know if there will be bosses in the game, like if a certain boss character has more health than other characters or not, but I know at least for all of the regular enemies that you encounter in the game, if you shoot somebody in the head, they're going to die. That's just the way it is. There is no damage per second system. Furthermore, there's also not a leveled weapon and armor system in place. You're not going to be throwing away your M4 carbine because it's only a level 3 and it's not strong enough to engage level 7 targets like you had in the Division. That for me was a real problem. I would get behind a weapon platform that I would really like, and then I would have to throw that weapon away because, oh, I just found an AK or something that's 6 levels higher and I can use that now, and the weapon I was customizing and building up to be my favorite weapon is now useless until I find another one of a better level somewhere else. That's not going to be the kind of mechanic they're using in Ghost Recon Wildlands. You can customize your weapon with the gunsmith setup, and you'll be able to trick it out with the various weapon attachments and camo schemes and things like that that you want to put on it. But when you invest in a weapon in the game and build it up, you're not going to find it just as a throwaway thing because now you've spent all this time upgrading it and now it's 3 levels out of date. That's just not going to be happening. You'll be able to devote yourself to a single weapon in a single play style and use that. So if you want to be a sniper, go ahead and put all kinds of customization upgrades on your favorite sniper rifle, and that can be one that will take you from the beginning of the game to the end of the game if you want it, or wait until you get deeper in the game and unlock a better sniper rifle, but either way, you're not going to have to replace it every 3 to 5 levels. Furthermore, we know that the scale of the game is completely different than in The Division. You were not able to use vehicles in The Division to get around the game world. This game world is so much larger that you have to use vehicles to get around if you want to go from one extreme section of the map to another end of the game world. I was reading on Reddit that somebody had actually done a comparison test for fitting the entire game world of The Division into like a small sector of the game world map. The scale is completely different. Another thing that separates the two games is that Ghost Recon is designed to be played with a complete stealth mechanic in mind. Now in The Division, you could put a silencer on your gun. Stealth in The Division honestly came down to more of getting a drop on an enemy or creating an ambush situation, whereas ghosting through an entire mission on that was not something that was nearly as viable as in a game like this. Of course, if you want to play Ghost Recon as more of an assaulter, you want to attack objectives head on, you can do that. This game doesn't pigeonhole you into only playing it stealth or only playing it assault. You can go different ways on that. Another big difference between the two games was that there is no cover system in place for Ghost Recon Wildlands, unless it's something that they implement at the last minute or a major design decision they redirect. As of this point in time, there is no cover system in play in that game. And I know a lot of people have commented that they feel like the game definitely needs it. But as far as Tom Clancy games go, a lot of them don't use a whole lot of cover systems in place. Splinter Cell does, but that's definitely a tighter, more claustrophobic game, and obviously The Division did. We've had 1 or 2 titles in the Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six franchise that have used a cover system, but by and large, those 2 franchises did not have a cover system. In fact, in Rainbow Six Siege, there's not one present at all, although there is a lean mechanic in place. So having some kind of a sticky cover system is not something that's like a staple of a Ghost Recon or a Rainbow Six game. They may have experimented with it in 1 or 2 titles, but it's a mechanic that was featured heavily in The Division and will not be present in Ghost Recon Wildlands. There does appear to be a little bit of similarity in the amount of character customization that's going on. We've heard that there's a bunch of presets that you can choose from as far as what your character looks like, and we don't know how further you can take that customization beyond presets, but we also know that they have a bunch of uniform options, and that was something you could do a lot of in The Division. So there might be a little bit of similarity there as far as to just being able to kind of customize the way your character looks in regards to outfits and pieces of clothing. But Wildlands takes it a step further with the gunsmith system, and the amount of detail you'll be able to put into your gun, the amount of attachments that go on it, and the camos, and the different things that will affect the way it handles and operates, go beyond anything seen in any other game. Even in Ghost Recon Future Soldier, where they premiered the gunsmith system, it's going even beyond the amount of customization that offered into something deeper still. Another key way that this game differs significantly from The Division is that the way that you can tackle the missions is very non-linear structure. And you had a little bit of that in The Division, but because it was a level-based game, you would have choices of missions that you could do in any order, but only within your given sphere of levels. So for instance, if you were a level 2, you might have maybe 5 missions you could choose from that were in the level 3 to 5 setting for difficulty. But if you were to go attempt a level 12 mission while you were level 5, you were not going to get through that mission. You were going to get your butt handed to you, and there was just no way that you were going to survive through that. The enemies would be scaled way higher than you could do anything effective to in regards of damage. The amount of damage you received from those higher level enemies because of the scaling was going to be significant. You were not going to get through a battle like that. And while I suppose it would be technically possible to really take your time and get through something like that, and if you never got hit and if you did maximum damage at all times, I guess maybe it would be possible. By and large, it just wasn't something that was a viable choice for you to do in the game. When you were a certain level, you needed to take on missions that were around your level for skill and difficulty. They've already stated in Ghost Recon Wildlands you can do any mission in any order. Now, there is a little bit of prerequisites to some of these things. They want it set up so that you might have to track down an informer before you find out where his cartel leader is, or where the guy above him is, or where the next objective point might be. So some missions come in these like multi-part sequences where you have to do step A before you can do step B, but it's all part of like a single mission just spread across sub-missions within that mission. So taking out the cartel leader might first require you to take out his lieutenant below him, which first might require you to find an informant that tells you where to find that, which first might require you to find a piece of intel to point you to that informant. But there is no like, oh, I can't go to this part of the game world yet because these guys are so much higher level than I am. That kind of a setup does not exist. You have total freedom to go anywhere you want to. And I was talking about this a little earlier when we were mentioning just the size and scale of the game world being very different and how much bigger it is. But the vehicles are going to be huge in setting it apart from a game like The Division. I mean, you can use everything from helicopters to airplanes to boats, trucks, motorcycles, cars. We know there's trains in the game world. I mean, you name it and it's there. And these aren't just ways of transporting yourself around. They also have a lot to do with how you can do a mission. You can drive into the middle of a village and create a major distraction. You can chase somebody down in a vehicle, and without that vehicle, you'll never be able to catch them. You can do an aerial insertion from a helicopter and parachute into an area or an airplane. Likewise, you can take a gunship into the air and rain down fire from above. These aren't just modes of transportation, they're ways to interact and engage with the game world. This is something The Division just doesn't offer. The final point of difference is the first-person aiming system. Now, you play the game moving in third person, but anytime you aim down your sights to shoot, it switches instantly to a first-person perspective. The only time you got that in The Division was when you were using a high-power magnification scope, but otherwise in any other situation it was always a third-person aiming perspective. So once you factor all of those considerations in, I just don't see that it's a fair comparison to say that Ghost Recon Wildlands is going to be The Division 2.0. Now, if you want to stay up to date on the latest for Ghost Recon Wildlands or Rainbow Six Siege, please like and subscribe. You can also follow me over at IcyCat25 on either Facebook or Twitter. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.